Hello everyone! Hearthstone's Journey to Un'Goro expansion is almost here, and in this video I want to take a look at the Paladin Legendary Quest, the Last Kaleidosaur, and its huge reward, Galvadon. So, Galvadon is going to be a really big deal. But is this quest still viable? Let's go into the details and find out. So the Last Kaleidosaur is the Paladin Legendary Quest. The quest is to cast 6 spells on your minions, and then you will receive Galvadon. And Galvadon, let me tell you something about Galvadon. Galvadon is a 5-mana 5/5 with a battle cry to adapt 5 times. 5 times! If you do the math, you can see that this means that Galvadon has an 83% chance to find any individual adaptation out of the 10 possible options, and it has a 64.44% chance to find the elusive Stealth plus Wind Fury combination. Now, Galvadon is definitely a card that can give you a win condition. However, Galvadon does have its weaknesses. There's no charge being offered in Adapt, so Galvadon is never going to be able to attack on the turn it's summoned. It's very likely to be able to stealth, so that it is able to attack next turn, but then it's blockable by taunts or removable by hard removal. And the biggest threat in the current meta to Galvadon is Devolve. Shaman just comes in, says, okay, nice Galvadon you have there. I play this 2-mana spell and now you have approximately a 3/5. Yeah, feels bad, man. So even though Galvadon has potential to be really insane, it doesn't quite always win the games by itself. And then there's also the road there. Cast 6 spells on your minions. Previous to this expansion, someone suggested that okay, I want to put in 6 buff spells. Let's say 10 buff spells to actually get the quest done sometime. Even more buff spells into my deck. And people would have thought that he has lost it. That guy has totally lost it. So this is not a desirable deck type to run. Not at all. Feels bad, man. But before we completely reject the idea, let's take a look at some of the new tools that we have available and if something out there can save it. So what do we get? We get Adaptation, we get a 1-mana Paladin spell to adapt a friendly minion, and that's a pretty weak spell. You have a 30% chance to find any single adaptation, so even though there are already YouTube clips about Wild Pyromancer gaining Poisonous, which is equal to Pyromancer plus equality, it's a board clear, then no, that doesn't really feel strong. However, given the requirement to run so many buffs, it's still possible that Adaptation will find a place in quest decks. And then you're just rolling these RNG rolls. Okay, do I find the good one? Do I find what I need or not? Feels bad, man, but that's something that Paladin will probably be forced to do if they want to complete the quest. Another new Paladin spell, Lost in the Jungle, a 1-mana spell to summon 2 1/1 Silverhand recruits. This can potentially give the Paladin some early game, or it can be combined with some buff stuff later in the game to give platform to buffs or otherwise mass buff your Silverhand recruits. Unfortunately, these are not the days of Bran Bronzebeard and Quartermaster. There are not going to be any 9/9 Silverhand recruits. All the mass buffs that you have available are much more moderate, and the ability to summon Silverhand recruits is much weaker with no Muster for Battle and no Justica Trueheart. So I don't see a deck running Silverhand recruit synergies being a strong one. So I'm not completely sure whether this card will even see play. Then yet another card that may or may not help you, the Emerald Hive Queen. A neutral 1-mana 2/3 beast that makes your minions cost 2 more. The upside of Emerald Hive Queen is that if you drop it on 1, it's one of the few minions that if you play it on 1, it's very likely to survive until turn 2. Of course you cannot play any other minions because this makes your minions cost more, but you might be able to buff it. So let's say you drop the Hive Queen on 1, on turn 2 you play your quest and you play a 1 mana buff on this. So there's some potential there, but this also reveals the gimmicky nature of the Paladin quest. You're all in on this one minion carrying you. Hard, it's really hard. But then we get to the card that's really the card that you are going to build all your quest decks around. The Primalfin Champion. A 2 mana 1/2 Murloc with a death rattle to return any spells you cast on this minion to your hand. Now that's a big deal. As long as this can dodge a transformation effect, so as long as it doesn't get hexed or polymorphed, and you're able to slam in some spells into this, that means that you are only paying the mana cost. You will get all the cards back, and that's huge. And if you have the time to develop that kind of thing, you might combine this with Finja. So you could add this to your regular Finja package. You could have Finja and the Bluegill Warriors and the War Leaders and the Primalfin Champion. Or maybe you just want to run Finja and the Primalfin Champion so that you will ensure that you get that one from Finja whenever Finja kills a minion. There are a bunch of alternatives like this, and finding your Primalfin Champion and buffing it up is going to be the most important thing for a Paladin quest deck. Again, this unfortunately reveals how all in the Paladin quest deck is. This guy must not get polymorphed, must not get hexed. It can be killed, you're fine if it's killed, that's okay, that's perfectly fine. But if it gets transformed, oh, you're in so much trouble. Then there's also the neutral legendary minion, the Voraxx. At first sight this looks like, okay, this card was made for the Paladin quest. The card test says, after you cast a spell on this minion, summon a 1/1 plant and cast another copy on it. But that's not what it does. What it does is that after you cast a spell on Voraxx, Voraxx summons a 1/1 minion, and Voraxx casts a spell on the 1/1 minion. No quest credit for the duplicates. And that in turn means, when you look at it, it's a 4 mana 3/3, terrible stat line for the cost. You're hardly able to use, well, you cannot play it on curve. It's a very late game card. You would have to build a quest deck that's planning to go into the late game, and then you might be able to gain some value with Voraxx. But at the top of the curve of the new cards that we're getting, the buff cards, is the Spikeridged Steed. It's a 6 mana paladin spell that gives a minion +2, +6 and taunt, and when the minion dies, it summons a Stegodon, which is a 2/6 taunt. So that is a ton of stats and a ton of taunts in one card, at 6 mana though. So obviously the value of this card is immense. As long as the target doesn't get transformed, the same story all over the place when it comes to buff paladin, then this can really deliver some value. The really insane combo, when you high roll this, it's like you have played Finja on 5, Finja kills a minion on 6, Finja pulls the Primalfin Champion, which returns spells to your hand when it dies, and you buff the Primalfin Champion with the Steed. And if it dies, you get another Steed. The value. But once again, Paladin Quest requires you to high roll. I can imagine that there can be 3 ways to build a Paladin Quest deck. First, you could go with a really low curve deck with double Divine Favor. You try to empty your hand, play minions that are generally difficult to trade into, stuff like Runic Egg, Argent Squire, Devilsaur Egg. Play these kinds of minions, empty your hand, replenish with the Divine Favor. That might even be the strongest type. Then there's the other option, which is a little bit slower. If you go a little bit more mid-range and you put in the water package. So now you have Finja, you have some Murlocs, You're still going to play some of these awkward to trade into cards like the Devilsaur Egg, but you also have the Finja package supporting you. And the third option would be to take a control route. Then you could really use the Voraxx, for example. But the problem is that, first of all, Control Paladin, it does not have room for the buffs. Even though in a control list you could run fewer buffs than usual, but if you go with this type of Wild Pyromancers, Consecrations, Equalities, this full Control Paladin core, then fitting in the buffs is really awkward. And there's also another fundamental issue, which is that the quest reward Galvadon is really at its best in the mid game. If you go into very late game and then you get Galvadon, and because Galvadon is generally only removable by hard removal, well, if you let your opponent draw almost his entire deck, if he has hard removal available in the deck at all, then he has found it. So there are many issues trying to build a control paladin around the quest, and I don't think that's going to be possible, in any good way at least. On a positive note, if you want to play control paladin, it might be possible to make the Nezot paladin work still in the upcoming meta. That looks much more probable. So there are some other avenues you can pursue as a control paladin, but quest is not one of those. So here's what I imagine a mid-range approach to completing the quest would look like. It's a buff deck. It doesn't run all of those 1-drops. Actually, it mostly runs Mean Street Marshal, which can be a good fit into a buff deck. Most of the buffs that you can cast on it can increase that attack and then get you the card draw. And you run Devilsaur Egg, another very powerful card to be buffed. You buff it, you trade it, you get a 5/5, very powerful. And because you don't have that much of an early game, so you need to stabilize against aggro. And for that purpose there's Figureframe Burn Bristle, joined by a pair of Tar Creepers. Tar Creeper again, pretty interesting in a buff deck. Okay, so on your own turn it's generally a 1/5, but what if you Blessing of Kings it? You have a 5/9 on your own turn. Okay, you just made an Ancient of War out of it. Looks pretty sweet. So these mid-game taunts are meant to help you stabilize before you get to the Finja package and the Finja swing turn and getting those Murlocs out and starting to use your buffs on them. And finally, on the top of the curve on this deck, there's Mukla, Tyrant of the Veil. A 6-mana 5/5 that adds 2 bananas to your hand. So the bananas give minion +1/+1. So you get 2 more buff spells that you can use to complete your quest. A great fit to a quest paladin deck. Overall though, building this quest paladin deck has been one of the most difficult exercises I have made right now when theorycrafting decks for Journey to Un'Goro. It just seems very difficult to make it work. Running a ton of buffs it's inherently weak in Hearthstone. And you have stuff like Primalfin Champion and stuff like Spikeridged Steed. And when the stars align, these can result in some really nice things. You have the ability to snowball very hard early. If you get a good buff target and the opponent doesn't have any hard removal, you have some means to stabilize with taunts. And once you get your quest completed and you get Galvadon out, you can try to push for the win. So I think this deck has its chances, but overall it looks like Quest Paladin might not be a top tier deck in the upcoming meta. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more.